Well, Missouri lawmakers could double down on transgender minor restrictions.
WGEM Missouri Capitol Bureau reporter Hannah Falcon has more as lawmakers consider removing sunset clauses from two bills restricting transgender care.
In total, Missouri lawmakers will be discussing 10 bills related to transgender Missourians, 8 today and 2 later this week. But for one freshman member of the House, these bills hit close to home.
The first time I came to the Capitol, I was 17.
Kansas City Democratic Representative Wick Thomas is the first openly transgender lawmaker in Missouri. But it's not their first time in Jeff City. That was as a teen who was bullied for their sexual identity.
Not knowing where else to turn, I took it to the state capitol. I couldn't find any adults here either who would take seriously a threat against so many students.
Today, several bills are being considered that Thomas says attacks their community. If passed, these bills will remove the sunset clause from the Save Women's Sports Act, which only allows students to participate in sports with the gender they were assigned at birth, and another law that bans gender transition surgery for minors. These laws were supposed to be lifted in 3 years. But by removing the sunset clauses, they would be in effect indefinitely.
I am saddened to see the attacks coming from inside the House. What was once high school bullying is now legislation.
This is a matter of fairness and protecting children.
Republican Representative Brian Seitz is one of several lawmakers working to remove the sunsets. He tells me this is not about attacking the transgender community, only about protecting children.
Don't let them smoke cigarettes. We don't let them drink alcohol. Why in the world would we allow them to transition into something that God hasn't made them?
It will still be another week until committee members can vote on the bills they hear today. But Seitz expects these bills to be brought to the floor quickly. Reporting in Jefferson City, I'm Hannah Falcon, WGEM News.